Hi, this is Steve Nicotopoulos here with the Second Ward Office. We're going to get going in just a few minutes here. We're waiting for a few more people to tune in. Thank you so much for signing up for tonight's meeting. Just a quick reminder before we get going, this is going to be a panel discussion. So how we are working this year is that we've, for the last week, had people sign up for this webinar. They've submitted many questions, and I mean hundreds. I spent a lot of time going through the questions. Some of them were very animated and colorful. Some of them were just asking for us to explain what's being done. So in the issue of all transparency, we're going to have a discussion tonight with a few different panelists and Alderman Hopkins. We'll start that in just a few minutes. Reminder that you can go to aldermanhopkins.com if you need any information about what we're doing here at the Second Ward Office. That could relate to streets and sidewalks. That could relate to zoning, property management, businesses, parks, city council itself, or even city departments. That's what we do here at the Second Ward Office. If we don't directly work on something, we'll at least make sure we connect you with the right people that do. That said, tonight's meeting is going to be about illegal driving. That involves motorcycles being used illegally, modified vehicles, drag racing concerns. You know, there was enough of this topic that Alderman Hopkins last week decided to split this into a second meeting. I'm going to take an opportunity quickly to mention that for those of you who are tuning in from the Gold Coast, we appreciate you taking the time. Last week's meeting around this time was co-sponsored by the Gold Coast Neighborhood Association. So we want to give a big shout out to everything that they do there. They were on that meeting as well to go ahead and update people on the private security patrols they do. But thank you to Vern and everybody at Gold Coast Neighborhoods Association for how much work they do to not only represent the neighborhood, but represent what they're hearing to our office so we can go ahead and work with police commanders on some of the safety issues. So let me go ahead and just put my screen off for a second here. One more minute before we get started. All right, looks like we have a few hundred people in the room, so thank you very much. Alderman Hopkins, thank you for taking the time to host the meeting here tonight. Again, this is Steve Nicotopoulos. I'm broadcasting here from the Second Ward Office. We are going to start the meeting here, and just as a quick reminder, this is a meeting that is going to be a panel discussion. A few of our different panelists are going to discuss a lot of the matters that people want to have their questions answered on. Tonight, we're going to be joined by Commander Sean Loughran, new 18th District Commander, John Hein. We're also going to have Deputy Director from OEMC, Thomas Mills, join the call as well. And then Sergeant Chris Schenk, along with Captain Biefeld over at the 18th District, and then Deputy Chief Bars as well. So we do have a pretty big panel. A lot of these topics we're going to get into relate to, again, illegal driving, illegally modified motorcycles, illegal usage, drag racing. So before I take up any more time, let me go ahead and just introduce Alderman Brian Hopkins to get us started here.
Thank you very much, Steve, and welcome everyone, especially those who joined us a week ago for our first installment in this series of public safety webinars. If you were here with us a week ago, you happened to be present during what turned out to be the last official act of Commander Jill Stevens before she was promoted from her position as commander of the 18th District. A lot of us who had worked with her for that period of time got a chance to thank her for her hard work and wish her well in her new position. At the time we had this meeting last week, there was a rumor that there might be a change, but we couldn't discuss it because we didn't have confirmation on that. But I'm glad Commander Stevens had the opportunity to meet with all of us one final time before accepting the promotion. And tonight we'll be able to meet her replacement. And it's very important that we have this discussion because the position of district commander is the most important law enforcement position outside of the superintendent himself. District commanders have a tremendous amount of latitude in terms of how they approach their job, how they approach their community relations, how they deploy the resources that they have at their disposal in the neighborhoods that they represent. At last week's meeting, I happened to mention that during the course of my time, not only as alderman, but as a president of a neighborhood association in the 18th district before I became an alderman, I've worked with 7 different 18th district commanders. And now I can make that number 8. And I'm actually delighted to introduce our new commander, Commander Hein, and talk just a little bit about his background. He has 25 years of experience as a law enforcement professional in the Chicago Police Department. He rose through the ranks from patrolman to sergeant to lieutenant, worked in some very tough districts, some very tough neighborhoods in the city of Chicago during the course of his career. And he also has a degree in criminal justice from Southern Illinois University. And it's increasingly important that the ranking leaders of the Chicago Police Department have a background in academic study. The science of policing has changed so dramatically in recent years. For people to understand how that works, to have data-driven decision-making, and to have a degree in criminal justice really makes a difference in the type of leadership that a commander can bring to bear in a neighborhood like the 18th district. So we are delighted to welcome Commander John Hein and to give all of you a chance to get to know him as he talks a little bit about what he plans to do in his new role. But tonight's focus will be on traffic safety, noise abatement, the ongoing problem with reckless driving, with motorcycle groups terrorizing the neighborhood and threatening pedestrians and doing all the things that you know they do. You've seen the videos. Probably you've actually seen it live as well. So we're going to talk about some of the specialized units that have been formed to address this and to give you the latest update on what's being done to try and abate this problem. But before we get into the specifics of that, I want to turn it over to Commander Hein to give him a chance to introduce himself. Commander, welcome, and thank you very much for being here tonight.
All right, Alderman Hopkins, thank you for giving me the opportunity to meet everyone in the 18th district community. Like the Alderman said, I have 25 years in law enforcement. Many of my background has been in targeted response unit, mobile strike force, and attack units all throughout the various parts of the
I'm
city.
sorry, Commander, I don't want to interrupt, but we're having some video problems. Can we see if we can activate your video? I don't know if that's on our end or yours, but we
Yeah,
we
you know,
can hear
Alderman,
you.
if we could take a quick second here, let me mention the Alderman, if you can help check your settings and see on the right side, if you can make some of our guests co-hosts of the meeting. It's a setting that is buried a little bit in the sidebar when you look at the participants for who the 10 panelists are. And sorry that that's on your setting. It's one of those things where even after 18 months of us all using Zoom, we are all still remembering where all of these little things are set. While we get everybody set, let me just take a quick moment here to give them time to do that. I'm going to mention a few of the topics that we're going to go through in the next hour. Not only will we be discussing recent missions here that are being done, but we're also going to talk about some of the ordinance and things that residents are asking us to report on. Also, there will be some discussions about questions about how enforcement is being done. We're going to get into that as well. And then obviously how residents can help report. You know, that's something our office says a lot, what you guys can do to help out so that we can build the data that we need to help police with this. But hopefully we can get some of the video working here for some of the guests of the meeting here. And then we're going to try to get moving here with some video on the rest of this call.
All right. Yeah, try it now. I think I enabled co-hosting capabilities for both the commander. Commander, look on your screen. It should have given you an option.
Yep.
And also Sergeant Shank, I think I just enabled you as well. So hopefully that'll work. There we go. There's one. It's Tom Mills from OEMC. So it is working. Let me try again for the commander.
I think my video appears to be working, and then if you can hear me, let me know.
Yeah, we can. Okay. Sorry about the interruption, folks. All right, let's proceed. Go ahead, Commander.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Alderman Hopkins for hosting tonight's meeting. It's very important. Our community partners are a huge part of any solution that we're going to have to address these problems. Since I've been here since September 1st, I've been in pretty much direct contact with the Alderman's office about the issues relevant to the 18th district and to his ward. I appreciate that warm welcome that you gave me and the opportunity to speak to you on the issues that are so important to the 18th district. Like the Alderman mentioned, this is my 26th year in law enforcement. I've had the privilege and honor of serving everywhere throughout the city in many different times, challenging times, but always through our community partners have we come up with some solutions to address the issues that we face. Tonight, I look forward to tonight's meeting. With me, I have Commander Sean Loughran from the traffic section, Captain Bielefeld, and our Cap Sergeant Chris Schenk to address our panel from the 18th district. So Alderman, thank you for the welcome, and we look forward to tonight's meeting.
Thank you. And yeah, just to move forward with the meeting, just as a reminder, everybody, this is the webinar, second word webinar on illegal driving that we've been hearing reports of. Motorcycles, illegal use of that, modified vehicles, and drag racing. One thing that we're going to talk first is just a little overview. So if everybody can kind of weigh in as they choose. One thing is, where are these problems occurring the most? Here at the second ward, we see reports happening on Lakeshore Drive, LaSalle, North Avenue. I mean, we know where they're being reported to us from our residents, but let me ask just on a citywide level, where are you seeing a lot of these issues?
So on behalf of the law enforcement aspect of it, any major corridor, Lakeshore Drive, Roosevelt, North Avenue, anywhere that they have a large avenue for the number of riders, depending on the number of riders that they have to showcase what they consider their talents. We didn't really have too much this weekend on Chicago Avenue. We had one caravan come through Can-Ams that we tried to put a stop to immediately. But any major corridor that they choose to find as many people to watch what they consider their special talent of riding these motorcycles.
Yeah, and John, can I add to that?
Yes.
So in adding to that, the sport bike community, which is what we're talking about, it's also very similar to the drag racing community, and it is indeed a community. They have a circuit that they'll travel to, and they'll move from one location to another, all the way through from the western suburbs, the northern suburbs, and then they come into the city, and then they'll make their circuit through a number of different places where they historically would be less populated areas to now would have changed. Situations and neighborhoods have changed where they're now more populated areas, and then again gravitate out throughout the city. So districts involved. There's of course the 18th district. They'll come through the 19th district, the 1st district just south of us. Those are districts that are directly around us, where we are right now in the 18th district. The 12th district, which is the West Loop area, the 9th district, the 8th district. They'll travel through the 16th district, as well as travel through the 11th district and the 15th district. Those are just, and I'm sorry, the 8th district as well on the south side as well. So those are, it impacts, it's a citywide problem and a suburb problem as well too, because all the surrounding collar suburbs, anywhere where 290 will drive through, 9094 will drive through. Those are all places that are experiencing similar issues.
And just to introduce everyone out there to what some of the police keep seeing is that there is a lot of information on social media about motorcycle groups and how they're gathering and they're organizing. Is anyone here familiar with motorcycle culture in a way where you can kind of share with our audience here why these gatherings are happening, how they're being organized, and in a sense, how they actually represent kind of a small community in themselves? I mean, the illegal behavior is not forgivable, but it's the motorcycle culture in itself has kind of taken everything up a notch over the last few years using social media. Can anybody comment on that?
Sure. Let's talk about it. Sure. Okay. So when we talk about motorcycle culture, your average individual might think that involves anybody with a motorcycle. That's actually not accurate. We're talking about specifically sport bike riders. So they're high-end, high-speed motorcycles, not necessarily something you'd see like a Harley Davidson or a traditional touring bike. These are bikes that are designed specifically for high-speed riding. Where they were popular in the 80s and the 90s Now they have a resurgence. What's in addition to that, you have also what's been folded into, and it's become quite a problem, is you have the accessibility of dirt bikes and cheaper versions of motorcycles that are not really technically street legal, and four-wheelers. And that's what we're seeing an increase with those, and they're being used as, because they're a cheaper alternative to expensive motorcycles. And they're also, you're seeing them come together in packs and groups, which is a transient problem. Think of it like a flash mob. When people say flash mob, you'll see 100, 200, 300 people will show up at one prearranged location, cause anarchy, and then they quickly, as quick as they arrive, they quickly disperse and move to another location or neighborhood. And that's a very similar parallel that we're seeing, but on motorcycles or on two-wheel and four-wheel bikes. And that's what we're having an issue with managing.
Thank you so much. And then I see we have Deputy Director Mills here from OEMC. For those who don't know, OEMC is the Office of Emergency Management. Is there a sense that there are more calls coming into 911? We here at the office will tell people to use 911 to report some of these actions when they see them or the illegal use. Is there anything that you're seeing at the 911 call center that kind of shows that there is this many types of incidents that are happening?
Well, let me just give you a quick background. I'm new to OEMC. I've been here 2 weeks. I just retired from Chicago Police Department after 32 years. I retired as the deputy chief. I want to say congratulations, Commander John Hein, on his promotion. And I've worked with a lot of people on this panel. But in my recent assignment at Chicago Police Department, we're working with Commander Loughran and everyone else. Like he said, this is a different type of situation here. These groups tend to come down, and they really seem to come down when we're having other events in the downtown central business area, and probably more to just kind of create havoc, tie up traffic, things like that. So I don't have any data yet, and I will research that, and I can get it back to the alderman and your staff on type of costs coming into OEMC. But being, as of I left CPD on 15 August, being out there for the various things happening downtown, we would see things on social media. They will pop up very quick. They are very smart where they don't share a lot on the public pages. And by the time we would get it and reach out to our other partners like state police and everyone else to help, they will come down in groves. I'm sure there are calls from service. They do come in. They tend to get on the sidewalks, things like that. We try to gain control, then they leave. Or we'll make a couple of arrests with the state police and our other partners out there, then they'll leave. But I can dig down deeper, and I will share it with you, our cost for service on some of these events, and hopefully that'll give you more information as we continue to work collaboratively with everyone to bring some sort of resolution to these issues.
Thank you. Yeah, just to tidy that subject up, Alderman Hopkins, had us look into it for how many calls. We only had the 2020 numbers, so that's why I was asking. But in 2020, we were told that there were 4,074 calls to OEMC specifically for drag racing or drifting concerns, which is a huge amount, obviously. Moving on, Alderman, can I talk a little bit about the noise ordinance? Probably the number one thing that people emailed our office asking about was, why can't the noise ordinance be enforced? Do you have anything that you want to share with us on your thoughts regarding the noise ordinance and the complications surrounding that?
Yeah, actually, I believe this time, but I see I still have audio. So I don't know, Steve, if you can repair that on your end, but if not, I can just answer the question verbally. And I just want to preface it by saying, for everyone on this call, what you need to know is you've already made a difference on this issue. We certainly have other more pressing issues when it comes to crime. We have a murder epidemic. We have children being gunned down in the streets. So, motorcycle noise is on the list of things we have to address. It may not be the number one thing, but it's an important issue. And it's more than just a quality of life issue, because traffic enforcement very often leads to bringing wanted offenders to justice. It leads to confiscation of illegal weapons. It leads to identifying suspects in other crimes. It's an important part of law enforcement. So even though, it may not quite rise to the level of some of the other things that we want our police to be doing to protect us, it's very important, and it's why we're having this meeting. But I wouldn't have been able to have this meeting back in 2015 when I first got elected to this office, because there was no special detail. There was no special attention being paid to the problem of illegal drifting and illegal motorcycle gangs, and all the traffic concerns that go along with that. It was really being brushed aside for other priorities. And it's only because people continued, at our request, calling 911 to document the problem, and people insisted on a response from law enforcement. And we have one. Commander Loughran has a fair amount of expertise on this subject matter, and it's not just him. He has a team with him that he's assembled. He's conducted details. In fact, he was in the process of conducting a special detail over the weekend when, unfortunately, there was a major collision on Lakeshore Drive involving multiple vehicles and 5 injuries. I think one of them may have become a fatality by now. And he had to rededicate his resources that he was planning to use for motorcycle enforcement. They got pulled into the investigation of that fatal crash on Lakeshore Drive. So, that speaks again to the resource challenge that we have. And that's my problem. That's something that the city council has to address, and we will address. The police department can only deal with the resources and the funding that we grant to them. And in my opinion, we're not doing a good enough job right now. And that's going to be something we talk about in the upcoming budget session. But we have passed a number of ordinances over the recent years to give the ability to impound illegal motorcycles, to give the ability to impound vehicles that do not have license plates. We're trying to give the police as many tools as we can to make a difference on this. And again, it starts with the citizens demanding something happen. And you guys have been demanding changes, and you're starting to see the results of that. So with that, Commander, can you discuss a little bit about the specialized detail that you were doing in conjunction with traffic enforcement, particularly on the subject of motorcycles?
So thank you, Alderman. So my name is Sean Loughran. I'm the Commander of Special Functions. Just I should have introduced myself sooner. I'm the Commander of Special Functions. Special Functions Division is it's a subsection of the department that is composed of a number of different specialty units, specially trained units, one of which is the traffic section that I have that works for me. So what we do with all of the units is offer specialty expertise and support for district functions, such as the 18th district. John and I have worked together, so we've worked together before in the past, and very happy that we can continue to do the same. As you highlighted, Alderman, we were in the conjunction of working a joint mission with the 18th district, the 1st district, and the traffic section. So just to give you, and this is an ongoing process all the time, but just this particular weekend, we were trying to focus on motorcycles. That also, while we're trying to focus on motorcycles, we're also obviously coming in contact with other drivers of regular vehicles that are committing violations. So in the course of that, we issued 27 different citations, 9 different stops resulted in a verbal warning, 4 different positive community interactions, 131 different parking violations, 3 vehicles that were impounded, and 8 administrative notices of violation. That's where we issued a summons in lieu of a physical arrest. So it's 179 different drivers that we came in contact with, that we took some sort of enforcement action or gave some sort of verbal warning. And that's over the course of 4 days. But as you noted, on 2 separate days, because one of the areas that we are specifically tasked with is enforcement on Lakeshore Drive, there were 2 separate incidents where I had to divert all of our personnel to major crashes on the drive. So we had to suspend our efforts on that day, on those days. You know, going back also to, so I've done a comprehensive list over since we first really had a dedicated focus on this. Back in January of 2020 was when I was first brought into this and asked to provide expert testimony for city council. So that's when we started chronicling our activities, our missions, and our enforcement efforts. So just, I mean, so everybody on the board is aware, this is an ongoing issue that we are trying to, we're trying to give you some sort of respite, some sort of alleviation of the problem. So over that time span, this is of course in 2020, and our focus as a department had to change because of COVID. Our enforcement capability was severely limited until we learned what we can and can't do regards to the disease. And then, of course, some things changed with policing, and of course, in the downtown area when we had civil unrest. But just we had conducted 55 separate missions, of which we had issued 1,368 citations, 85 different verbal warnings, 122 different parkers with the hanging violations, investigative stop reports where we conducted in lieu of citations or otherwise. We documented that in 16 different reports. 32 impounds and tows, 23 different citations were issued. 23 different citations were issued in lieu of physical arrest. 2 guns were recovered, and 65 different fleeing incidents. Now, that's an important number, that very last number I want to tell you, because I'm not sure if people are aware of the difficulty in trying to enforce or take an enforcement action on motorcycles. As I had mentioned before, or maybe it was mentioned in a previous meeting, the entire sport bike community, that is not the sport bike community at large, but the small subsection of the sport bike community that's causing these problems. These are individuals that are trying to cause attention or draw as much attention to themselves as possible as they're committing these acts, as they're doing burnouts, as they're riding on sidewalks. They're trying to goad law enforcement into pursuing them, into chasing them, which is, if we're going to pursue, I'm sorry, if law enforcement is going to be involved in a vehicle pursuit, it's only for very specific offenses. And quite frankly, for traffic offenses is not something that we're allowed to pursue for. And I don't think that's something that the public at large or anybody on this meeting would want us to be pursuing for, because that creates a significant risk to health and the safety of the individuals that are on the meeting itself. We have to always conduct what's called the balancing test. Is the need to apprehend the offender, is that outweigh the inherent dangers involved in that traffic pursuit? And I can't imagine there would be a criminal or a civil court that would agree that it's important, or that the dangers are less, or I'm sorry, the need to apprehend the offender outweighs the dangers that are involved. Because remember, any kind of a motorcycle, even a dirt bike or something like that, that's a missile. That's a 300, 400, 500-pound missile traveling at excessive speeds. And if they lose control and they strike somebody, and if they were to injure somebody, you'd have to ask yourself, you know, who's to blame here? Now, you and I both know, or anybody in this meeting would know, that's the individual operator. However, is that the best or most effective and the safest use of law enforcement resources? And that's what we always have to consider. But we are still in continuing to, in a number of different ways, attempting to apprehend these individuals and hold them accountable. But if people can understand, and I hope you understand, it is an incredibly difficult task.
Thank you for that, Commander, and I appreciate it. I have a follow-up question for you, just a second here. Let me mention real quick, just for the sake of trying to get everybody's video on, I want to mention one of the side accounts that we have here for Commander Sean Loughran. One of those side accounts actually has the setting control to turn on the Alderman's video. If you could take a second just to look in your side panel here to see if you have the ability to go to the Alderman's name and turn his video on.
Yeah,
as funny as that is, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, I'm not logged in. I'm actually at John. I'm
Okay.
in the 18th district with John Hein, so maybe.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you want to.
Well, we can still hear him, so no problem.
Oh, maybe Deputy Chief Bars.
Well, it's Commander Commander Hein, but it says Commander Loughran. It's got your name on it, but it's actually Commander Hein's
that's-
account. So
I forwarded the link, or John, you came off of my link, so.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure for everybody at home, Brady Bunch never looked this confusing, but hey, we were trying to make sure everybody's on the screen here, so we'll get it going. Quick reminder to everybody tuning in, this is the second word meeting on the illegal driving issue across Chicago involving illegal use of motorcycles, modified vehicles, and drag racing. As a quick reminder, we're broadcasting here from the second ward office. You can go to aldermanhopkins.com if you need any more information about anything that we're doing here in the second ward. It can relate to streets and sidewalks, parks, city council or city departments, street lighting, potholes, you name it. We're your one-stop shop here.
Sergeant, if you see the 3 dots next to my photo, click on the 3 dots. It'll give you a pull-down menu, and one of the options should be make co-host. So if you make me a co-host, click on that, and then I'll be able to activate my video.
There's no 3 dots, Alderman.
Just move move the cursor over my photo. 3 dots should appear.
Yeah, anybody who's logged in under Commander Sean Loughran, we have a couple different accounts that are being used at the same time here by our panel. Somebody may have that ability to go into the panelist sidebar, hover over the alderman's name, and there might be something that comes up that either says more, where you can change the setting to co-host, or there's 3 dots where you can also change the setting to co-host. So we'll see if we can get everybody here who's logged in under the Commander Sean Loughran name, just to double check that while we continue. You know, we have a lot of people in the meeting here, so I want to continue on with the questions here. Let me go back to Deputy Director Mills. If we could talk for just a second, sir. One thing that we talk about with reporting is how do people use 911? Frankly, we've got a lot of people writing into our office here saying, if I just saw somebody run a stop sign, if I just saw somebody run a red light, what good does it do to report it to 911? Or do you know generally how the data center tries to gather this info? Is it helpful for people to call in when they see something like that happening?
Absolutely. But as you know, calls received from 911 are prioritized by the crime itself. And depending upon when the call comes in, what else is happening, just like Commander Loughran and the Alderman was speaking about earlier, there was the accident that happened on Lakeshore Drive. So that would take a lot of resources from CPD. So no, we definitely encourage the calls. But when we're dispatching those calls, we dispatch them to the units that's available, and we must follow the protocol of the appropriate tier in which the incident is positioned itself in. So depending on what information they're providing may not be as important as, of course, you know, a domestic incident of some sort or robbery in progress, things like that. But those calls are received and they're documented. And like I said, we do put them out there over the zone. If there's units up, you know, because of course we see via GPS where units are, and if we see a car may run by. But again, in those type of incidents, those motorcycles and 4-wheelers and the 3-wheelers, they are constantly moving. So as may come in, they may no longer be in that particular location. So again, I will always stress, and this is coming from the law enforcement side of my career, definitely call the police. We call 911. I'm sorry. We want that information. We want all of that information to constantly come in so we can track, monitor, and support CPD and everyone else by way of that information we receive.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, and I can confirm, you know, here at the second ward, when the alderman has us working on ordinance work or trying to pull data, we do request 911 call information to showcase that there is an issue at an intersection or a block. So we do use that a lot, so I appreciate that. We're going to shift gears here to some of the discussion about Lakeshore Drive. Many calls about vehicle noise, motorcycle noise, up and down Lakeshore Drive, all day, all night. Now, we did look into a few different things with Lakeshore Drive, but let me preface this with a comment here that we got from one of our residents. Thanks so much for tonight's topic. I live in the John Hancock building, look out at the Lakeshore S-curve. Screeching tires and crashes happen regularly, and now add gigantic motorcycle caravans and drag racing. It seems like there's a lot of dangerous conditions at the same time. How is Lakeshore Drive being handled compared to some of the inner streets? Because I know that it is considered a state road. So what kind of complexities are you seeing with patrolling or, trying to manage some of this issue along Lakeshore Drive?
Okay, so patrolling the Lakeshore Drive north and south of I-55 is one of the things that the traffic section is entrusted with. If you would think of it, it is essentially, it's an expressway, and we handle it much the same. The traffic section officers all work what we call 1099. They work by themselves. We go through a significant amount of training to make sure that they are aware of the dangers and the inherent dangers of patrolling, curbing cars, and then safely getting back into traffic on a high-speed roadway, not unlike on the expressway. So that is something that we wind up managing from an enforcement end, and also from an enforcement end from the concept of writing citations, but also writing crash reports, managing major scenes, and that end of it as well too. So we have that as a normal day-to-day function. We also have an opportunity through grant funding through the state. We've been afforded an opportunity to take enforcement action, hire back officers when they're available and when we can get them back solely from the traffic section to do speed enforcement missions. Now, normally those grant monies are only available for 3 months during the year. We assigned the grant sergeant, the sergeant who one of the hats he wears is he manages all the grants and all the grant recommendations and applications. So what we did is I asked my sergeant to retool that money and ask from the state if we would have permission to use that for a longer period of time, because we're seeing that those speeders are not necessarily just in the 3 key months during the year. And the state grant writers or the grant approval process allowed us to do that. So that's something that we're going to continue to do, and for a longer period of time. We also, on occasion, if we have an increase of complaints of drunk or impaired driving from district commanders, we also have an opportunity to redeploy personnel that are hired back to work those DUI saturation patrols, and we have used those in the past when I received documented complaints from, as Tom Mills had mentioned, when we get 911 calls in regards to drunk driving, when we monitor those and see an increase of those, when we get those community complaints from meetings such as this, those district commanders, so John would write me and say, I'm having an increase in drunk driving complaints on Lakeshore Drive in conjunction with other offenses. And then we would have the means and the resources, I would say the funding, I should say, to hire back officers to take those enforcement action for that limited amount of time as well there too. That's just and some of the facets that the traffic section is involved.
Thank you, Commander. Yeah, Commander Hein, when you're taking over the 18th district, and again, congratulations. We're happy to have you here. Talking about Lakeshore Drive, I know that it must be a really big challenge. We were looking at that at the office today, and it being a state highway, a lot of the things people ask is why aren't there speed cameras on Lakeshore Drive? But we actually, took a look, and there are some state laws that prevent that from happening. So it's an outside of Chicago decision regarding what's going on with Lakeshore Drive speed cameras. But that said, I know you're new to the job here, but do you feel like there is enough space for police patrols on the side of Lakeshore Drive? I know there's only certain areas in Lakeshore Drive where you could really have a police officer with a speed camera, like aiming out of their car. Forgive me if I'm dated in my thought on that. But do you have a sense as to how the 18th can play a role in monitoring Lakeshore Drive?
Yeah, I appreciate that opportunity. So when you're talking earlier about calls for service and everything, and especially what everyone is observing, and we always ask them if they see something to say something, correct? And so all those calls for service, and especially when we talk about speeding or any other issue, we do what data driven analysis. So we'll get back and we'll start to look about what the data is showing us, where we need to deploy the officers, how effectively it is for our plan. And we'll reevaluate that on a weekly basis. So as far as speeding, the only concern I might have, obviously, that Commander Loughran could talk to a little bit more too, is the safety of the officers as far as where they sit because of Lakeshore Drive and the opportunities of where you can put a squad car to monitor that, because I know it's kind of tight on the rails there. But as far as seatbelt missions or directed missions, again, it goes back to calls for service where anything's trending. If we have violence or any other crime that's trending off of Lakeshore Drive into the 18th district, we'll do that data-driven analysis with Deputy Chief Bars and Captain Beafield along with the tactical lieutenant when we study all the calls for service that are coming in from all the residents of the 18th district.
So, John, if you want me to piggyback off of that, to give you an example of something that's specific to the Gold Coast and with working with Deputy Chief Jill Stevens previously, there were a few different instances. This is a few months ago, where you had shots were fired by individuals that were in and around the S curve, and I believe that they had struck some windows in the district. I don't remember what 100 block north of Lakeshore Drive, but Jill had reached out to me and we dialogued and determined that it was also in conjunction with some speeding complaints. So what we had done is we retasked and repurposed some officers over on midnights and conducted some speeding missions to try to work effective and efficiently. And it wound up actually working. There were no more complaints, the shots fired in that area. And we also made it a point to through enforcement action, we took it a point, we were effective in decreasing those speeding complaints. However, what I do want to caution people and advise people is probably the most, where everybody would understand, when we were all sheltering in place, well, when most people were sheltering in place, because we did not have, we didn't, I'd say, have that opportunity to shelter in place. If you were driving on the street, you noticed that everybody was speeding. At that point, there were no cars on the street, and everybody was driving. Probably they were making it to their intended location in record time, we'll just say. Unfortunately, a lot of people picked up some terrible habits at that time, and that is continuing. This is not a unique problem to Chicago. This is actually a very common problem. And again, traffic fatalities, we saw there was an increase of traffic fatalities. That was an interesting article that came out in regards to traffic fatalities. And that's another metric, as John had mentioned. That's how we kind of focus on where we should be. We should be taking these traffic enforcement missions and where we should be focusing on that data. I'll say specifically also to what John had said, a few, when Rahm Emanuel was the mayor, there was an initiative that we had discussed and we tried, previous to my assignment now, I was a commander in the 20th district. The 20th district is actually 2 districts north of here, and part of it, the 20th district has Lakeshore Drive on it. So we also had the same issues that are paralleled with speeders, loud motorcycles, and the like. And so all of the Lakeside district commanders started assigning marked cars, and we were parking them on the median with their lights on overnights. So that's fantastic. It had an immediate impact on speeders and noise complaints. However, it didn't take long before a drunk driver struck 2 of my officers and critically injured one of them, because a parked car on the side of the road with flashing lights is like, it draws moths to a flame. So what it unfortunately did is it injured 2 of my officers, and the one officer was off for almost a year. And that was with them parked on a median behind one of the flower boxes in as safe as possible. So that's something that we looked at and we tried using, but that wound up becoming incredibly dangerous for the officers. So as John said, you have to be very, very careful when you're enforcing on the drive, because with the state police, they teach them in their academy, it's not a question if you're going to be hit by a car on the side of the road. It's a question of when you're going to be hit by a car on the side of the road. And that's something obviously we want to make sure we protect our officers as best as possible.
Well, thank you for that. We appreciate that. Alderman, let me bring you back into the conversation here. I was about to talk a little bit about some of the efforts to try to help with impounding. You know, sometimes when vehicles are able to be impounded, it's an important tool to send a message that illegal vehicles can't be in use in Chicago. Before I talk about that, I wanted to mention some of the drag racing reports that we've gotten along LaSalle Street, one neighbor specifically says, I hear motorcycles and cars drag racing down LaSalle Street almost every week. It feels lawless, dangerous, and scary. What can be done about it? I know we're talking about a lot of those issues here, but again, I know that you're also working on a lot of ways to help police with impoundments. Did you want to discuss that matter?
Yeah, we have a pretty good idea where the rally points are. You know, the intel and the experience and the 911 calls from people on this call and other residents, by the way, have really helped. So we know where we have a good chance during a warm night in the summer of finding a high concentration of illegal motorcycles when they stop to take a break. But without the ability to impound them at that point, really, what good does it do? We can't chase them, and now we can't corral them either, right? And one of the reasons that we haven't been able to is we didn't have the capability to do it on a large scale. And that has just changed. I just actually found out today that a request that I made for the Department of Streets and Sanitation to obtain a new specialty vehicle that can tow up to 10 motorcycles at a time. We were able to identify some money in the budget and we were able to acquire one. We now have one, which means we can go to a place like, for example, the BP Amico station where LaSalle and Clark meet, which is oftentimes a rallying point. And we can find vehicles that have outstanding warrants, that have been illegally modified, that we have on video doing, drifting or drag racing or whatever, and immediate impoundments can be effected, and those vehicles can be securely towed. Now, we have to be careful how we do that because obviously the city is liable for any damage that is incurred to the vehicle in the process of seizing it. This new vehicle that we've acquired is specifically designed to haul them in a quick, efficient manner and in a safe manner where it won't cause damage to the vehicle. So we don't wind up with lawsuits and judgments that we have to pay the very offenders that we're trying to crack down on. So, just going through the Q&A section, I see a lot of frustration with people talking about some of these measures that we're offering right now. They don't seem to be enough. And I acknowledge that. We have some limitations that I think most of the sworn personnel on this call are a little bit frustrated with the limitations that they have to operate under, but they don't make those rules. They have to live under those rules and they have to respect those rules. And those rules tend to hamper what they might do otherwise. I'm a civilian and I feel the same sense of frustration. So we're trying to make as much progress as we can. Some of it is, admittedly small steps, but I think this new vehicle that we have is going to be a little bit bigger than a small step, especially if it's employed correctly. And at the beginning of the season, what we want is to affect a couple of missions where a number of impoundments will be made, and the very social media channels that right now promote this activity will have a deterring effect because the people who get their bike impounded are going to say, hey, I went to Chicago and they got my bike, it's going to cost me $800 to get it out of the pound. Maybe this isn't the place that I want to go and engage in that kind of reckless drifting behavior anymore. So we're hoping for a magnifying effect from some of these enforcement missions where we can do the most we have given the resources that we have, and allow the word to spread and to have it be a disincentive for these groups to keep coming downtown. That's going to make a difference, and hopefully you'll start to see it, where it doesn't happen as often as it has been happening. And I see that Commander Loughran wants to jump in there. So Commander, by all means.
No, I'm sorry. That was me. You got a comment.
Okay.
So sorry for the heading. Actually, through your assistance and with the Streets and Sand, that vehicle was deployed this weekend for a couple of missions that we ran, and we ended up having 76 tows this weekend. And we brought that vehicle out, and one motorcycle was taken. So we're hoping through social media that the word is spread, like you said, to put an end to some of these motorcycles coming down here.
And also, Alderman, to jump with John, for exactly that reason, we were trying to push this message out to all of the sport bike vendors, the different agencies, companies, stores that cater to and sell equipment and motorcycles through the CAPS office. Trying to, again, to make sure that they understand that resources in any law enforcement agency in any city, of course, are precious. And this organization, this group is, and again, it's forcing us to perhaps divert resources away from other things where we could be more effective, like say, for example, violence. It may be forcing us in a difficult time to choose one or the other or have a diminished effect. So that's why we're trying to also simultaneously push out and do a reach out to this community itself to say, hey, knock it off. We will hold you accountable and will continue to hold you accountable through this enforcement action. But really, you're forcing us and forcing our hand.
Well, thank you for that. That was very interesting. Wow, that's an amazing effort that you made this last weekend. Thank you for that. And let me just remind everybody, we're doing a live webinar here. This is one of many that we plan on doing here at the Second Ward Office. This is a safety webinar series. We're here with Commander Sean Loughran, the new commander of the 18th District, John Hein, Deputy Director from OENC, Thomas Mills, Deputy Chief Bars from the 3rd, and Captain Biefeld, and then of course, Sergeant Chris Shank from the 18th District. For those who don't know Chris Shank at the 18th, please make sure to say hello, give him a call over at 18. He works with the CAPS department and he can help with a lot of immediate questions people have about neighborhood issues. One thing though I wanted to ask about here is perception of police on the streets. One of the biggest questions we get here at the office is why aren't police there? Why aren't they showing up? From everything that you're telling me here on the meeting tonight, there is a lot of planning. There is a lot of strategy that goes into a lot of these weekends, especially holiday weekends. Commander Hein, I know, again, you're fresh at the 18, but can you tell us a little bit here about how you, what your manpower, is being used for, how you're trying to help with a lot of these different missions?
Absolutely. So like every weekend, especially a holiday weekend, but every weekend and every day, myself, Deputy Chief Bars, Chief Patrol Brian McDermott, Captain, Tactical Lieutenant, everybody, we get together and we strategize on what's going to happen. We look at like a lot of data-driven analysis, historical data, where we've experienced crime or trends or what's spiking currently. From that, we'll formulate what resources we have to address public safety and also to address our public engagement, our public, our social outreach, everything we can do to address whatever issues that's currently going on. So after that's done, we'll implement that to that night. And I know myself, Captain, Chris, Deputy Chief Bars, everybody was out there, all hands on deck weekend, watching and analyzing and observing to see if these strategies are working. If they're not working, we'll tweak it a certain way, but we'll try to deploy our resources onto where the issues are happening.
Thank you very much. Now, regarding illegal motorcycles, a whole series of questions here about when intersections get taken over. We've seen the video, last summer, all the way through this summer, where all of a sudden you see, a group of people in an intersection and a car is doing donuts right in the middle, or, street bikes like you're talking about are doing stunts. How do you disperse something like that when you only have so many officers to respond?
Well, with our officers and also with our technology, I think one of the greatest things every district has pretty much is the SDSC rooms. And those SDSC rooms are able to monitor pretty much every corner in the 18th district so that we have eyes and technology to call that out and to direct the officers to where that intersection, where we're having the occurrence of the problem. From there, our tactical teams are roving to address certain issues and everything, but it's mainly as we get back to when you're called about the residents, we're the first ones maybe to see it, to call. We'll disperse and we'll deploy in a timely manner as quickly as possible to address a safe outcome.
Then Alderman Hopkins, did you want to give any kind of an update on the noise monitoring program? For some people that might not know about it, it's something that you had been working on for years. Have you heard if that has been effective or useful for some of the SDSC rooms?
Yeah, it's actually been a mixed bag. We pushed for years for noise monitors. We finally got a pilot program where they were able to be installed on selected locations on Lakeshore Drive. They worked, but they also were unfortunately subject to noises that weren't groups of motorcycles. So they weren't as specific as we really needed them to be. But what happened was a result of the pilot program, we were able to identify companion video technology that actually worked better than the audio technology. So video cameras with software that are designed to recognize large groups of motorcycles behaving in a reckless manner on Lakeshore Drive. So we got to the same place that we wanted to get, only we were using video cues instead of audio cues to get there. And that technology is currently being in place. There's absolutely no way that a large group of motorcycles is going to escape the Strategic Decision Support Center's watchful eye. We know where they are. And again, technology needs to be the solution here, because I don't see us going back to the days when police are going to have blanket permission to engage in high-speed pursuits. There's been too many fatalities as a result of it. It's just, we don't have the stomach for it. And frankly, it's a risk to the officers and a risk to the general public. So now that the word is out and the motorcyclists know that they can flee without being pursued, we have to have alternative means using technology, using camera deployment, and that's happening. So we've added them all over, and we're still adding them. We're going to get to the point where I think we'll pretty much have blanket coverage from one end of Lakeshore Drive to the other. There's still a few gaps in the chain, but we're getting there, and we're closing that off. So that's part of the long-term solution. So the noise control monitor, the devices themselves, I wouldn't call them a success, but the pilot program itself was, because that video technology is currently in use at the SDC centers.
Thank you again, everybody. Let me just say in closing here, I want to thank everybody for joining the meeting tonight, but also, are there any last comments, any comments on what's been most effective for any of the policing? Commander Hein, we can start with you. Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with here as we're wrapping up the show?
There we go, the unmute. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the aldermen and the meeting tonight. Through our, I guess the greatest success or strategy that we're going to have is the collaboration with the citizens of the 18th district, with the alderman's office. We're always going to be proactive. As law enforcement, we're going to be proactive, but it's through our community engagement and our partners in the community that we're ultimately going to win and find a solution to these issues. When I found out I was going to the 18th district, I couldn't have been happier. The reputation that the aldermen in the 18th district and everything that they stand for, I truly believe with this partnership, we're gonna show some positive results, and we're gonna get to where we want to be. So on that behalf, I'd like to say thank you again, and looking forward to working with all of you.
There is one other development that may be a result of this meeting. Representative Cam Buckner has joined us. I see his name on the participant list, and he just posted in the chat box that he's willing to work with my office to change the state law that currently prohibits the use of video enforcement for speed control on Lakeshore Drive. And I'm delighted to hear that. Thank you, Representative Buckner. We'll be having that conversation with you tomorrow. I'll give you a call to follow up on that. I can only say that everyone on this call knows in recent years the history of video technology when it comes to traffic enforcement. There's a cloud over it in the city of Chicago due to the red light camera scandal that resulted in some people going to jail for some corruption and some other things. Unfortunately, the technology itself seems to have suffered guilt by association, which makes no sense to me. It's not the camera's fault that certain people who are engaged in this industry behaved in an unethical manner. That does not reflect on the technology. But nevertheless, for the past couple of years, every time we try to make some changes in state law, the shadow cast by that scandal of the past 10 years prohibits us from getting the support we need to make those changes in Springfield. But I'd like to think that the red light scandal is far enough in the rearview mirror now that maybe we can get a fresh approach. Maybe people won't be so reluctant to consider the benefits of using that technology. And I'm delighted to hear Representative Buckner is willing to take a second look at that and see if we can change the state law to implement that technology on Lakeshore Drive. It's sorely needed. And as I said a few minutes ago, the limitations that we now have on law enforcement, I think most of them are here to stay in terms of the anti-pursuit policies. That means that we have to find better, newer, more modern ways to apprehend criminals. And that means embracing the new technology that's being developed. So this is a step in that direction. Representative Buckner, I appreciate your willingness to consider it. And my office will be in touch with you tomorrow to follow up on that. So thank you.
Yeah, if we're a little lucky here, Cam, I see is on the call. If he wants to unmute, just mention a few things. You're more than welcome to right now, but thank you again for taking the time. This is breaking news with tonight's webinar. So it's good and welcome news. Here we go. Feel free to make a statement here.
Yeah, I won't belabor the point. Thank you, Alderman Hopkins, for getting everybody together, and thank you to the folks who are on this call. I did not know that particular thing was prohibited by state law. I don't understand why I can't figure it out just for the love of me right now. But what I will do is commit to doing some research, figuring out what's going on. And obviously, we need all the help we can get to make sure that we're keeping the community safe, and whatever I can do on the state level to partner with the work that you're doing. I'm here for it. So thank you guys so much for everything that you all continue to do.
Thank you. And I'll let you know that you also made the second ward staff very happy in the office here. We had been looking at it throughout the day. And to be honest with you, it's pretty complicated, but we were able to determine that. And I know it is one of the #1 things people wrote us about with this webinar. Why can't we have more speed enforcement on Lakeshore Drive? So we really do appreciate your willingness there. Commander Loughran, is there any last comments that you want to make here for the guests of the broadcast?
So it's an ongoing problem that we're still continuing to work at, and it is not unique to Chicago. One of the last things after discussing with Alderman Hopkins, we went back to zero and said, well, let's look at this again, and let's see if there's best practices that we can benchmark from other locations or other municipalities. So sitting in front of John is a series of reports that I received from other agencies, literally coast to coast, including and beyond the coast, one from Canada, one report from Honolulu. Every single agency we had noted was experiencing exactly the same issue. Two of the more comprehensive agencies reports that found the most success were Miami and Philadelphia, which is we're gonna benchmark some of the best practices from both of those two. But they also came to the same conclusion. Once these large packs of motorcycles and alternate vehicles, four-wheelers, three-wheelers, start moving, it's almost impossible to take enforcement action without causing a public safety issue. So our focus from here on out is going to be, of course, these rally locations. We are prohibited, however. We're only stuck with the confines and the borders of the city of Chicago. And as long as everybody understands, a number of them do rally out in the suburbs intentionally for that specific purpose. They know they're not idiots. They're pretty smart people. But we're not just throwing our hands up in the air and saying we quit. But we're going to continue to support the districts that are impacted by this to the best of our ability.
Thank you. And then any last comments from Captain Biefeld or Deputy Chief Bars, if you're still on the call?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, this is Deputy Chief Bars, the Central Control Group, which is the 1st and 18th District. We let Commander Loughran, who's our resident expert in traffic, speak today. But me and John Hein have committed to doing a joint operation with the 1st and the 18th District to address this concern. He gave us a stack of reports to study about best practices throughout the country, which we're going to put together that kind of game plan for the motorcycles. I just want to say to all the residents, we hear your concern and we're here to help you address that. Please call 911 if you see that. We're going to continue. If you see social media on this, send it to the 18th District, send it to the 1st District so we can have that heads up. But we hear you loud and clear that we're going to try to address that by studying best practices and come up with a mission plan for all of downtown, the 1st and the 18th District, to address this, and continue to send in your questions and your concerns to the 18th District, and we'll address those and we look forward to working for you and serving you to ensure public safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Bars. And then Deputy Director Mills, any last comments from you?
On behalf of Executive Director Rich Guidis here at the Office of Emergency Management Communications, we extend ourselves to support all of the city of Chicago. I encourage everyone to call 911. We are in constant communication with the command staff that's on this call, as well as all the Chicago Police Department and all of our city partners in government. So there is no dumb question or no correct answer unless we get all the questions and we can formulate and work collaboratively to get the smart and the most correct answer. So please dial 911. We look forward to speaking with each and every one of them. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. And then, of course, tonight was brought to us by Alderman Brian Hopkins. Alderman, any final comments?
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And I'm really encouraged, especially by Deputy Chief Bars and his closing remarks. You know, I sense a commitment. I know it. You guys take this seriously. It's an extraordinarily difficult problem to solve. And you need our help. You need the city council. We're about to go into our budget debate. And some of my colleagues I know think we're spending too much money on law enforcement. I think we need to spend more. And conversations like this are the reason I think that. So we're going to have that debate as well. But Deputy Chief, I really appreciate your commitment to solving this problem. You recognize, you know, that it's real and it's serious and it's a public safety issue because, you know, we're seeing an increase in fatalities on the roads due to this reckless driving of motorcycles, four-wheel drives, and everything. So, Commander Hein, welcome again to the 18th District. I look forward to working with you, and I know you're going to bring all of your experience, your 25 years, 26 years on the job. You're going to bring that to bear, and you're going to do the best you can under the circumstances to try and turn this thing around. You know, we all want to live in a safe community. You know, that's first and foremost for all of us, and we understand that. So thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We appreciate the discussion. We appreciate the feedback, and most of all, we appreciate that you took an oath to protect and serve the citizens of Chicago. Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you again, everybody. So yeah,
Thank you.
tonight was, thank you again. So yeah, tonight was a live webinar on illegal driving. Joined with special guest Cam Buckner. Thank you again, Cam, for joining the discussion. Just as a reminder for everybody, you can sign up for new webinars. We're going to put them in our newsletters. So go to aldermanhopkins.com to find out about the next ones that we're doing in addition to our Monday newsletters. And feel free to reach out to us here at the Second Ward office if you have any questions. The number is 312-643-2299. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We really appreciate your time and have a good night.